Good afternoon, everybody. We are here for the second breakout session of day 3 of the Purpose Summit, and we are joined by Julie Kowalski, who is you're the owner, CEO of Creative Partnerships. Been doing that for 35 years now. So she is incredibly talented with leadership development and culture building and just being awesome in general. So we are so grateful you're here. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you.
So thanks.
So hello, he forgot to tell you that I've been doing this for 35 years and I started when I was 11. Oh, yeah. So there you go. All right, topic today is winning hearts and minds in divided times. Before I get started, I just want to talk about these words up here. So when I say winning, I don't mean winning as in win-lose. I mean winning as in win-win. In other words, how do I gain sincere, heartfelt commitment from another person in order to accomplish a goal? Now, when I say divided times, what do you think I'm talking about? What'd you say? Today, yeah. Oh, wait. I got to get the microphone if we're going to have audience participation. So, no, I was just teasing. Sorry, Mike. It's an inside joke. For those, did you get it? Okay. All right, good. So Dawn says right now. That's what's going on right now. And of the 500 bazillion stock photos on the internet that I could have used to describe divided times visually, I picked this one. And for me, my experience of where we're at right now in our culture, in the country culture and in the business culture, this was a good way for me to express it. So what are they doing there? Tug of war, right. Now, all of us, I think, in this room probably played tug of war at some point as adults or children. And my experience with tug of war is that eventually one team gets stronger and they win, and the other team gets pulled over the line. You notice that's not a line there. So in other words, this team that wins is not pulling the other team along with them. They're pulling them into a dangerous place. So that's why I picked this particular slide, and it's what caused me to decide to talk about this topic today, 11, and the years before that I've never experienced a time like we're in right now. And about 2 years ago, I started asking the question, where are the voices of unity? Where are the people who are standing up and saying, no, we're not pulling the other side into the ditch. We are going to work together to bring the other side closer to us. So I was worried about this because this is my purpose statement, to cause others to see their story through the lens of hope and possibility. I'm not sure there's much hope and possibility in the ditch. Of is that purpose statement took me 65 years, 9 months, and 11 days to finally articulate. I couldn't figure out how to say it, but I did know 2 things. One is I am drawn to people who are lost or in despair or in trouble, like a fruit fly to a rotting peach. And I also have been given the gift to be able to sniff out possibility for them in their hopelessness, sniff it out like a hound dog. So we're going to rewind a little bit to day one, where we talked about memory games, and I'm going to give you a bonus. Here's the bonus. If you can think of some freakish combination of hound dog and fruit fly, you can remember by the end of the session what my purpose statement is. Like, where else did you get a bonus today? So I'm going to start talking about something that happened to me just this week. The first day we were here, we went to lunch. We've got a couple people with us, and we're looking for our tickets. You know, I'm like, oh, do you got your tickets? And well, I think we go through that gyration that probably everybody here got to till we found our lunch tickets. And in the connecting booth to us was a man, well, two men, but man facing me, and he's, what's the thing with the tickets? Like, I want a ticket. And he was wearing a hat, and on his hat it had Vietnam veteran. And I asked him, are you a Vietnam veteran? And he said, yes. And I walked over and I said, then I would like to give you my ticket as a small reflection of gratitude. Because when I see people who have served in our military, I feel, or even on our police force, I feel compelled to acknowledge them. And he took my ticket, and his friend was there, and I gave him a ticket too. So there's 2 lunches, big deal. And I walked away, and then I realized that they had already ordered and their food was not on our menu, so the tickets wouldn't work. His name was Hombre. And I said, Hombre, I'm going to have to ask for your tickets back. And I said, because they won't work for you, but I'm going to pick up your tab. He was okay with the ticket. But when I said I was going to pick up his tab, he said, no way. I'm not letting you do that. And I said, no, really, it would be a gift to me if you would let me do that. And he actually got a little energized about it, like, no way, you're like crossing the line. And I realized that my intention, he wasn't able to hear, I think because he was worried about how much the bill was going to be. So I looked him straight in the eye and I said, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not buying your check, but I want you to know why I want to buy you dinner, buy your lunch. And I looked him to eyeball and I said, you served our country in the Vietnam War. And you came back from that war and were treated very poorly. It was a very bad situation to which most people did not sign up for. And here's this war veteran Marine, didn't want me to buy him lunch, in a restaurant, breaking down in tears. And I'm looking at him, and the tears are coming to his eyes, and he said, okay, you can buy me lunch. And what I realized in that moment was how important being relatable is to being able to win a person's heart and mind. So that was just cool that it happened on the first day of the Purpose Summit, and I was all fired up. Well, that's Hombre. Let's get us started. Now I want to talk about 4 things that we do not do enough of in our present state that would really help us make a difference in terms of winning hearts and minds. And the first one is be crystal clear about your goal. What is it that you want to accomplish? Yesterday, or on Tuesday, when I bought Hombre's lunch, what I wanted to accomplish was to show him that I recognized what serving in that war cost him, not just by serving, but serving in that particular war. So we all have goals when we're trying to win others' hearts and minds. And for me, the big thing is the heart, because if you don't get the heart, the head doesn't matter. So let's pick a subject that, isn't too explosive. Oh, go figure, there's nothing on that list anymore. That's a subject. I'm just going to give you an example. So I had a client about 20 years ago. I was working on a project with a client, a colleague, and this client was obnoxious, in my opinion. He was nitpicky. He didn't speak nicely to us. He never said thank you. Just not a very nice guy. in working with my colleague and I. So he sent me an email, and it was typical of his approach. And I read his email, and then I forwarded his email to my colleague who was also on the project, and I said some pretty naughty stuff about this guy. But then I pushed send. Just a nanosecond before I realized I didn't forward it, I replied to it. So I'm sitting here thinking I'm going to get a pretty bad spanking for this. And I didn't even know what to do. I was like almost paralyzed. Because how do you recover from that? So I don't know if Joel, if I sent you a nasty, an email intended for my colleague that was slamming you and you were my client, could it be a little bit provocative? Yeah, it's like, yeah. 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 So, and I would too, to be honest. So the phone rings like 3 seconds later, and I pick up the phone and it's him. And he said, hey, Julie, he said, I just, you probably know by now that you sent the email to me and not your colleague. I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he said, I appreciate that. I appreciate you acknowledging it may not have been the best thing to do. It didn't feel very kind to me. And I'm like, it didn't feel very kind to me? Like, what? And he went into a conversation about how he didn't think I should have done that. However, he was unaware that I was experiencing him that way. And he felt grateful that I shared that information with him. And that, he said, we're going to sit down and we're going to have a conversation the next time we're eyeball to eyeball, and we're going to figure out how we're going to work together. So in the meantime, I asked that if you have anything like that you need to say, that you would call me. I promise I'll listen. And I was like on the floor. You got to be kidding me. So what I learned from Eric in that moment was that his goal, first of all, was not to be a jerk. And B, he didn't know he was a jerk. And C, he cared enough for our relationship to not take me down. I mean, he could have canceled a $100,000 gig on me like that, but he didn't. Because he had his goal in mind. And I say that, hey, be crystal clear on your goal, because sometimes we're not clear on our goal. And sometimes we're not honest about our goal. Sometimes we say we want to make a change, but we really don't. We want something else. Let's see, I want to explore this with you. Well, let me ask this question. I always use this as my acid test. When I'm deciding how I want to react, I ask, do I want peace? Do I want prosperity? Or do I want to be right? I think this question, do you want to be in peace or do you want to be right, has saved my marriage. Because if we didn't have that to level the playing field, we would be lost. So checking your work using that question is so important. Now, I want to give you an example. I received this email from a friend of mine. I'm going to read it real quick. This country is founded on the principle of justice for all. The flag is an important symbol of those principles. I am aggravated that conservatives have claimed the flag as their own. Patriots protest when our views are not represented. Obviously, she's not a conservative. My question, how would you assure a dialogue hearing the intent rather than getting mired in petty debate? Just hearing those words, what would you say her goal is? Is her goal to have a dialogue that doesn't get side railed by petty debate? What's her goal? I'm sorry. Would you say that she wants to be right? She wants to correct them, right? She wants to straighten them out. Because her language, conservatives, first of all, I never even heard of this subject, that conservatives claim the flag as their own. But the implication that patriots protest when they're not heard implies that there's a differential there. So I replied to her basically with the conversation I just shared with you. And I said, this is what I would do. I would get clear on my goal. What do you really want to accomplish? Because if you want these patriots to listen to you, tell them that you resent them and that they're wrong and you're right, probably not going to hear you. And there probably will be an icky conversation. She didn't respond to my reply, even though I was really quite respectful. So this is what I see all the time. You know, if I'm looking at someone and I'm saying, I feel like you don't respect me. Dawn, I feel like you treat me like a second-class citizen. And my goal for you is to have you hear me. Probably the least effective thing I could do is start throwing accusations about your intentions at you. So we not only have to be clear, but we have to be honest about our goal. If I want to make you as miserable, uncomfortable, and angry as you've made me, that's a good approach. All right, next skill for winning hearts and minds is being curious, not furious. Oh my goodness, there's so much fury going around. And the problem with fury and winning hearts and minds is a fearful mind might bow down to a threat, to your fury. But fury does not, in any world I've lived in, a heart win. I've never seen anybody have someone else get 6 inches from their face and scream horrible things to them and say, oh gosh, you've converted me. I'm going to change my ways. Just doesn't happen. Share a quick story about a movie. I watched this movie. Anybody in this room seen The Other Side of Anger? It's a movie. It's kind of an old movie. I watched it for the second time. That woman in the center is the star of the movie. That's 2 of her 4 daughters. And here's the movie starts with her youngest daughter, who's in high school, saying, my mother used to be the nicest person in the world. And now she's turned into a monster. And she elaborates on that monster thing quite a bit. And you can just see this daughter's heartbreak. And she says, I would tell her these things, and then I would turn and run as fast as I can. So what was she talking about? One morning, the mom wakes up. Dad didn't come home the night before. And the mom has this narrative in her head that the dad is having an affair with his secretary. And she called the secretary's office, and the secretary moved to another country. And so she thinks the husband didn't come home because he ran away with his secretary. She tells her 4 daughters this. And that narrative starts to drive every aspect of their life. This mother gets so angry, she can't take care of her children. Every decision is built with anger. She becomes an alcoholic. This is the monster. This is the trigger that created that monster in that woman. And then, of course, Kevin Costner comes into play. And, you know, there's this like little courting thing, and she turns back into a human being. And I think that was the intention of the movie. But this movie had the most shocking twist of any movie I can recall. Because towards the end, there's a construction crew in their backyard, and it's going to clear some trees away. And they find this, you know, there's a hole in the ground, there's wood over it. That I don't even know what that was called. You know, maybe there should be a train track there or something. They find the father dead in that hole. Nobody asked any questions. Nobody researched this because the narrative that they were buying into was totally attached to the fantasy that they had going on. So it's possible they could have saved this guy's life if they would have went looking for him the next day. The mother refused to call anybody to get information. She refused to try and talk to them. Milestones happened with these daughters. One almost died. Dad wasn't there. This whole family lived in sheer agony and destruction because they got furious and not curious. So curiosity is no big deal. You just ask questions instead of accusing. Sometimes it's hard to do. Any of you know who that guy on the left is? On my right, your left? No? That guy's name is Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis was at 10 years old living in a primarily white community, and he was the only black child in his Cub Scout troop. And at 10 years old, they had their Cub Scout parade, and he was in the front of the line carrying the American flag, and people started throwing things at him, like cans and bottles. And they continued to do it, and he thought all the Cub Scouts were getting this. Because he's at the front, he didn't realize it was just him. So the troop leaders of the scout troop come around him, and they remove him from the site, and he goes home and he asks his parents, well, why did they do that? And they told him they did it because he was black, and they hated him because he was black. And he asked the question, how can they hate me? They don't even know me. I can only imagine what that would feel like. So as an adult, he starts to write a book on the Ku Klux Klan, and he's a musician, and he's playing music one day, and this guy comes up and talks to him. And somewhere in the conversation, he's saying, yeah, you play really good music, and you learned it from whatever, some white musician. And he said, actually, I didn't. This, rooted in black music. And the guy denied it. And then they discover that this guy is a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And for whatever reason, he decides he wants to buy Daryl a drink. And Daryl sits over and takes the drink. And they start having a conversation. And he says, I want to meet the person who's in charge of your group. And with more courage than probably everybody in this room has, he invites him to a meeting. And he befriends this guy. And then he starts to go to Ku Klux Klan rallies because he wants to answer that question. This is his goal. It's not to show them that they're wrong. It's not to recruit them. His goal is to understand the mindset that causes people to hate people because of the color of their skin. I'd say that's a high level of curiosity and a low level of fury. Although his goal was just to understand more, over many years, he continued to participate in these rallies, not just as an observer. And what eventually happened is I don't know the names of the hierarchy in the Ku Klux Klan, but he was actually eventually the man he met with elevated to the highest level of the Ku Klux Klan. And they remained friends. And there are speeches this Ku Klux Klan leader gave that acknowledged what a good person he was, but they had different beliefs. One day, that Ku Klux Klan leader at the top of the rank converted. He gave his hat, whatever you call the robe, to Daryl, and he said, I am leaving this life. I no longer believe this way. Over 200 Ku Klux Klan members, who I think would be fair to say would be reasonably racist, gave up their robes, having interacted with this guy. So we have a lot of tension right now in our culture, and the ability for someone to just ask and inquire rather than accuse and demean made a huge difference. I don't know how many other single black men who play music for a living and are not activists have converted over 200 radically racist human beings into non-racist human beings. That's the power of curiosity. And I feel like we need a whole bunch more of that if we're going to find peace and unity in our country. All right, I'm almost embarrassed to put this one up, leveraging common ground. Because if you read a book about negotiation, go to Amazon.com, look at the 10,000 books on negotiation. How many of them do you think would say leverage common ground? Almost all, right? If not all. This is like a no-brainer. But we seem to really struggle with it. I put this example up here just because I thought about it. I was listening to the news and there was all this conversation about the economy. So, you know, we just turned over a president who had a lot of people who strongly, strongly hated him. And there are a lot of people who also strongly liked him. And so the people on Biden's side are like, oh my God, thanks God, Donald Trump is gone because his economy plan is better. The people on the Trump side are saying, no, you're wrong. President Trump got it right. And that's a conversation that looks like this, right? Nobody's moving the needle. Nobody. And when I hear that conversation, I wonder, what if they're both wrong? Or what if they're part wrong and part right? And that's the question we need to ask, because we play these zero-sum games instead. And when we play a zero-sum game, nothing happens. We get lose-lose or win-lose at best. But we don't solve any problems. Pick a topic in our schools, in our politics, in our media. Pick one topic where the community is leveraging common ground today. Just tell me one. We just don't do it. So, winning strategy, building off of what's there. If you can start by what's there and build off of that, and sometimes you have to go to the lowest common denominator. We're both human beings. Sometimes that's your common ground. But that's your winning strategy, and the zero-sum propositions of win-lose or lose-lose just aren't helping us at all. So what do you think? Why is it so difficult for us to use common ground as our playing field? Why is that so hard for us? What stops us? The desire to be right, okay? And the belief that we are right. Like we never even consider that there might be some truth in both, but pick a topic where one side is clearly all right and one side is clearly wrong. It drives me out of my mind, because I'm all about hope and possibility, and there's zero possibility when we can't take an issue like, should kids go back to school now? And we have the absolutely, it's so overdue, and you people are idiots for not letting them crowd. And then we have the other crowd that's saying, you just want to kill our teachers and damage our children for life. This is what we have. And there's such an intensity of the clash that nobody is getting in a room and sitting down and saying, how can we make this work? What are the barriers we're up against? What are the solutions that other people? Nobody is sitting down and having a civilized conversation, and thus hearts and minds are not one, and kids are getting shuffled around like things on a shuffleboard. I did some research, and this is just a really small recap, but it's hard for me to work with common ground. So I really have to recognize, if I want to solve this problem, I have to move in this direction. So here's just 3 stories 10 cities get together with their communities and their police force, and the communities and their police force, without any activists, without any politicians, sit in the same room and ask, how are we going to fix this? They have listening sessions. That's where people listen and don't get spun to. And when they do that, in the second session, the city of Camden, New Jersey had an 8 times higher murder rate, homicide rate, than New York City. That's pretty scary, right? And look at what they did. They reduced the number of homicides by 50% simply by having the community and the police sit down in the same room and build on common ground. That is available to every one of us all the time. For some reason, we just don't think to do it. And then if 22 top religious leaders from around the world, representing more than a dozen different religions, can get together and work on this common ground of a message of universal love, tolerance, and brotherhood, we should be able to do this in our business. We should be able to do this with our relationships. We should be able to do it with our spouse, a partner, and our children. And I invite you to consider that the next time you get stuck. Okay, last one is choose inspiration over compelling. Wait, I'll just say compelling. And what do you think I mean by compelling? I'm sorry? Convincing? What kind of convincing? What'd you say?
Your own opinion?
Your own opinion? Yeah, so let me share with you some things that I call compelling that we're using a lot today. Like, it's my opinion, I'm not going to listen to you. Oops, you lose your job because you said a word that we don't like, even in a constructive context, and you lost your job. Canceling, we all know what that is, and then blaming and shaming. It pains me so deeply to see people who are trying to take a stand for what they believe be put in a position where people are shaming them publicly and sharing their information and spreading vile lies about them. And I wonder, again, where are the voices of unity? Why is it that media feeds us this crap all day long and no one says, I'm done with you? I remember when the media used to report the news. Now they recite their version of the news. I remember when, if the media reported something that was proven not true, they had to do a what? A retraction, right? Now they don't even do sincere retractions. And we allow this to happen. We participate in it. We watch their news shows. And the same thing is going on in our schools and in our families. There was a statistic that said, I want to say it was over 50%. Over 50% of people surveyed across all sorts of different lifestyles and biases reported that they felt unable or insecure about sharing their true beliefs with others because some of this would happen to them. That's a pretty scary thought, right? Because here's the thing. If I don't know your true belief, if I don't know what you really believe and why, and I haven't asked you any questions about it, how can I win your heart and mind? Canceling you doesn't do anything. Shutting you up doesn't do anything. If I understand where you're coming from, we can have a conversation. But instead, does anybody have a problem with me describing our present world this way? Anybody see it differently? So if it's happening in our country, if it's happening in our politics, it's happening in our school, it's happening in our universities, and it's happening in our homes. I know at least a dozen people who no longer talk to their family. This breaks my heart. Who no longer talk to their family members because of who they voted for in the presidential election. And we are, the minority is pressing this narrative. The majority remains quiet. And that's why I felt like when I lifted it up to God and said, God, where's the voice of the unity people? Where is their voice? You know what I heard back? And he made me do it even worse yesterday. I am the voice. Do you know how much courage it took for me in this climate to do this presentation? It's a lot. I'm a small business. I rely on a lot of people who will watch this video, support, and a lot of them don't appreciate this. But I'm calling to you in your world. You don't have to be an activist, but in your world, if you could just explore some of these concepts and start to say, no, it's not okay. I think in day one, someone says, be excited about your mission, but a little bit afraid. And my balance may have been a little bit different than the one he was speaking about, but it is a bit scary. But look at what's at cost. I have a 2-month-old granddaughter. This is not the life I want her to walk into. And if I don't start speaking up, and we don't start speaking up, your granddaughters and grandsons will be in the same boat. All right. I want to give a quick example of, Steve was a pastor of mine, and he told this story one Sunday in church. And he said he was trying to paint a cabinet, and his, I think, 5-year-old daughter was going to help him. So he gets a brush for her, and he shows her, you go up and down. And she goes, okay. He says, no, you're going everywhere. Go up and down. What's his goal? His goal is what? To get the cabinet painted and to teach her something useful. So after 3 or 4 hits of time swinging at that ball, he just says, what is wrong with you? I have told you 5 times, up and down, not do. And his little 5-year-old daughter looks up at him with her sweet, innocent eyes and says, Daddy, does it help you do better when people yell at you? There's too much yelling, too much finger pointing going on. So here's some different options. On the right, you see, on your right, you see some constructive points of view and behaviors. And on the left, you see what's often done today. What do you notice? First of all, I'm hard of hearing, and then negativity, right. So if you ask the question, which of these would inspire you? So going back to that question I asked earlier, these things don't inspire anything. These things compel people to cooperate, but not for the right reasons. And what do you see as a common theme in the items on the right? What words do you see show up? Collaboration. What else? Being invited. God, what a difference between being judged and being invited. Being educated in a constructive way. Speaking from the other person's interest. I did a poll prior to this session. I got 22 responses, and in those 22 responses, not one of them suggested anything like what we see on the left. So then the question is, if we agree on the things on the right are the things that we would respond to, if we're in agreement about that, how often are they present in our world? And how often are we on the other end of those choices? By the way, anybody who wants a copy of my presentation, just go on the app and I will send it to you. You're welcome to make your own, but sometimes that's so. People who are fearful because they're being coerced or threatened or afraid they're going to lose their job or afraid they're going to cancel are very rarely any of these things. They aren't vulnerable, they aren't productive, they aren't excited, they aren't inspired, they aren't fully engaged, and they're not productive. So if you're running a business and your MO has anything to do with fear or threat, if your company has made a decision to take a stand on a position that is inherently divisive and unfair to any group of constituents, this is what you lose. It's not worth it. I love this quote. This is Steve Jobs. If you're working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. Create a vision of unity, building on common ground with very clear intentions and goals, and you can move forward with that vision so that people don't need to be threatened or pushed. Now, I showed this to my son, and he thinks that Steve Jobs was the devil incarnate. And I bet others do. Someone who's watching this may feel the same way. Well, what it caused me to think about is that could be very well true. It could be that all the things my son believes are true about him are true. But for me, that doesn't change the value of his quote. I don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't have to say, oh, well, he was a narcissistic marketing guy in a technology world that didn't know his toe from a hole in the ground. I could believe that to be true, but you know what? That's a pretty profound statement. And it suits exactly what we're talking about. If you know of any person who gets purely defined by a single thing they did, something they did 25, 30 years ago, and you hold them accountable for that, what you're really saying is it's not in the human condition to evolve. We should all be judged by our worst moment or our biggest mistake. What kind of world do we have where that's our measurement, our metric? It's terrifying to me. Every one of us, we know this, God, you've been learning this since kindergarten. People have good traits and they have bad traits. And nobody's job is to live up to your expectation of who I should show up to be. It's your opportunity to invite me into another way of thinking. And that's what winning hearts and minds is all about. Okay, I want to wrap up with a few closing thoughts. In this two-way proposition, you can't win if the other person loses. And the same thing is true. No one has to lose for you to win, because there's always a win-win option. This is my second line is what I want you to take away, if nothing else. If accomplishing your purpose is really important to you, if you have a belief that says, I desperately want this to happen, I desperately want there to be no more gun violence, I desperately want no more people being killed by the police due to racism. If that's your goal, you need to do things that will get you to that end. So go back and check your work and ask yourself, how's this working for me? And if it's not working for you, you need to do the things that will work. Forced compliance isn't winning. All of this compelling tactical stuff that we're doing right now is not, it's not accomplishing your goal. You won't win from it. You'll only win until the winds change and go in the other direction. Nothing trumps commitment and buy-in. There's no way that a fearful mind complying for fear of consequences is going to be your top performer, is going to be a trusted ally, is going to be a difference maker with you. That's not how human nature works. And finally, impossible is a mindset, it's not a fact. We can together change the world. We can make a difference. And so seeing it, like, I can't tell you how many days I have to just lift up in prayer. God, I gotta tell you, I'm glad that nothing's impossible for you, because for me, this mess is pretty scary. It's freaking me out. But we have to trust that there is a way. And then we have to decide we want to be on that train and not just go along with the flow. So those are my thoughts. And oh gosh, I'm sorry, I've kept you 2 minutes over. But thank you so much for listening and for being here. It's been my gift to speak to you, and I really appreciate you attending. If you have any questions, I'll be around. Thank you. Thank you.